Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 26 of Divergent Dialogues. Today, we're going to be talking about what is autistic and ADHD burnout. So, I'm just going to make some assumptions here, but there's probably some people listening that are probably experiencing this right about now. We're recording, what is it, October. So, we're going into Christmas time now, which I feel is like burnout central. Because for us neurodivergent folks, a lot of demands increase, like social demands. Everyone wants to talk to us. Everyone wants to know what we want for Christmas, what we're doing for Christmas. We often have to have a lot more interaction with our families, sometimes perhaps more than we would like. Um, so it's a pretty full on time. You go to the shops, it's super busy. It's all pretty full on. Um, so I guess like in terms of like I guess what it is. So burnout is a state of physical, emotional, and mental exhaustion, and it has unique manifestations in autistic and ADHD folks compared to I guess a standard neurotypical burnout. And the key characteristics are profound exhaustion, withdrawal, increased challenges with executive functioning, and increased challenges with sensory overload. So we talked about burnout a little bit a few episodes ago, but it was mainly in the context of the workplace. So today we're just going to be talking about it more broadly. And yeah, I think it's really important to highlight that when it comes to autistic and ADHD burnout, it's not that kind of standard burnout that people talk about it all the time. It's, I guess, at a baseline we already have these challenges, and it increases those challenges significantly. So Teena, I guess what's your experience when like your clients present with burnout?
I always find it really interesting because people very rarely, sometimes they do, but very rarely present saying, I'm experiencing burnout. They often come along because they are, in their opinion, experiencing symptoms of depression, anxiety, and things of that nature. The like symptoms of burnout do mimic depression and anxiety a lot, but it is those little subtle nuanced differences that set the two apart. And I think coming from a neurodivergent perspective as well, that neurodivergence absolutely impacts that experience, which again makes it a bit different to depression and anxiety on its own.
Yeah, definitely. I have a similar experience where clients will come and they go, "Look, I'm really depressed. I'm fatigued," and I think it's because often when people go maybe see their GP, or maybe it's just like depression's a bit more commonly known. Like depression and anxiety. I mean, I often get referrals for people having depression and anxiety, and then I'm like, "Hey, actually, think you might be autistic, or think you might be ADHD." But yeah, I think it's people will come and they're like, "Oh, I'm so depressed. I have no energy. It like I keep trying to do everything. It's not working. I try and look after myself or whatever. And it's just, I can't, I know I need to eat better. I need to exercise. I need to do X, Y, Z." And then once we start talking a little bit more, I'm like, "Well, actually, what you need to do is less. Um, you need to do less." And then they go, "How do I do that? Like, I've got to live this particular lifestyle." And I guess, particularly for the late diagnosed folks, we've been taught to live in this world, which is go, 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 busy, busy, busy. And these days, we're completely accessible to people at all times. People can message us. We get work emails. We're bombarded with all this information on social media. So it's really hard to regulate.
Yeah, and this is where I love talking to people from a social work perspective, because I really love pointing out how all the things that we are socially conditioned to do, which add to all that executive function stuff and all the things we're doing in a day. So just things as simple as those 3 meals a day at those 3 particular times of the day. Sometimes that can feel like such a massive pressure because it doesn't quite fit. So we've got to stop doing what we're doing to make sure this is happening, or even the way we eat dinner. I often talk to FetLife families about, well, when you're experiencing burnout and it's all too much, do less. What can you get rid of? Do you really need to be cooking up dinner and serving it on plates? One of my go-to strategies when I'm struggling a bit is spaghetti bolognese in one pot, and then let it sort of cool down enough. Me and the kids sit on the kitchen floor with our forks and we all eat out of the pot together. It is so much fun and really reduces cleanup.
That sounds it kind of reminds me of what's the movie Lady and the Tramp, when they share the
Yeah.
in that romantic sense, obviously it's your family. Yeah, not that way, but yeah, just my oh gosh, like I just made that awkward. I think that's like an awkward autistic moment.
Well, it speaks to the connection that happens when you are sitting around just all sharing from the one plate, and it's nice and it helps.
Yeah, that's so sweet.
But social conditioning says that you should not be doing that. That's not how you're meant to serve dinner to your children.
Yeah, and I think it's so challenging. Like often a lot of my clients, they're like, okay, I'm neurodivergent, like now what, like how do I do life? Like I see all these other people who usually aren't neurodivergent, and they're doing like a million things, and like I can't even just like get up and feed myself and bathe myself and all this sort of thing. Like how does that even work? And I think, I mean, I can talk from my own personal experience that like I definitely think that I internalized a lot of these narratives, and I tried to be like this perfect, like everything had to be perfect, and I had to do things to like a ridiculous extent, which was just exhausting. And I found that the more I've let things go, the happier I am. And sometimes it's like, well, I don't really have to do these things in this particular way. And I'll talk to my clients, I'll be like, like there might be the ideal version of how you would like things to be, but there needs to be different levels, because as a neurodivergent person, we have fluctuating capacity. So we might wake up one day and go, yep, I'm keen, I want to go to the gym, I'm going to make a great breakfast, I'm going to do XYZ. And other days you might be like, I just want to be a couch burrito or a couch potato, and like I just want someone to kind of come and serve me snacks and give me water, and I just watch TV. And like both of those versions are valid, because we do need rest. And I feel like a lot of people, it's like, oh, I have to earn my rest, or I have to be constantly productive, and it's just not the case. It's not
or your to-do list has to be emptied before you're allowed to rest, which is ridiculous because to-do lists never fully empty.
Yeah. Especially when you're an ADHDer and you have like all these great ideas, and you're like, I want to do all these ideas right now. So yeah, I guess it's important to acknowledge that, I don't know, I think one of the hardest things for a lot of my clients to come to accept is that there's always going to be these challenges, but a big hurdle is accepting that you don't have to live life the same as people tell you to. Because at the end of the day, we live in this individualistic, capitalist society where we're meant to be super productive all the time, and our value is wrapped up in what we can produce. And my question to a lot of my clients is okay, so can you have value without producing things? Can you have value without doing working or studying or whatever? Like as a person, inherently everyone has value, and I think it's really important for people to have purpose and meaning in their life, but that might not equate to work or study or, whatever. It can be anything. So,
Yeah.
but that's hard to process, especially when you're late diagnosed and you've been told these messages your whole life.
Yeah, it is. You're right. It is really difficult to shift the way you do life, essentially. Because, like I was saying before about that sort of social conditioning, it is so ingrained that we don't always know where we're actually complying with it. Things as simple as eating off plates at the dinner table at a particular time range, and yeah, the way we do our dinner times is, I mean, it varies from family to family, but nonetheless we are, socially conditioned, culturally conditioned to do dinner in those particular ways. And when we can recognize that, yeah, like things like that can really contribute to that burnout coming on, we can make changes ahead of time. But also from an ADHD perspective, again, those messages we receive, especially being again late diagnosed, that hobby hopping and things like that, you're inconsistent, you're fickle, so we get really anxious about the idea of wanting to try a new hobby or wanting to pursue a new idea because, oh, what's everyone going to say?
Yeah.
And so we try and force ourselves to stay in the in the consistent and what we've been doing, because that's what you're meant to do. You're meant to be committed and you're meant to be on track, all those kinds of things, which mean don't change paths. For the ADHD, though, that can be incredibly draining and exhausting because the dopamine ran out 6 months ago. And trying to force yourself to stay focused on something that has no dopamine left in it can really be so mentally exhausting. And yeah, recognizing that things like that can also contribute to burnout. So figuring out how can I comfortably switch hobbies, get a promotion at work, change jobs, whatever it might be, to help sort of alleviate some of that.
Yeah. And I think, I guess something that I experienced a lot growing up, particularly as an autistic person, is that I kind of like accumulated all these like rules of life or rules of how you're meant to be and operate. And when someone, like it would be quite confronting for someone to be like, oh, hey, like, that like this life that you've created around your understanding of all these social rules and how you're meant to be. I just want you to like throw that out the window and like start from scratch. And it is hard, especially as autistic people. It's like, what? Like change? Like I don't want to change. Like even like for me, even if it is a positive change, I just freak out. I have no control over it. Like recently, my wife Emma left her job to come and support me to grow my business, and I love my wife. And in so many ways, she has helped. Like I don't think I've ever had with such regularity 3 meals per day because she's been making me breakfast, lunch, and dinner, which I'm so appreciative of because I really struggle with cooking and eating consistently. But even then, I was just like, oh, it took me about, I don't know, I think it's been 3 or 4 weeks, and only just this week I'm like settling in and going, okay, this is my new reality. So
Yeah.
I guess I want to validate as well that, like, even if changing your lifestyle in the medium to long term will be really beneficial and hopefully reduce burnout. And in our next episode, we're going to talk a little bit more about some strategies to address that. In the short term, it's hard. It's really hard, especially when you're late diagnosed and it's like, okay, well, I just found out that I'm autistic and or ADHD. And now you're telling me that like I need to change all these things.
Mm.
And also like sometimes it's not about making big changes necessarily. It's just about often changing the way you do things. So like
Mm.
you're still gonna have to eat, drink, sleep, shower, whatever, but just making like reducing the barriers, making it a little bit easier. But yeah, we'll talk about that more in the next episode.
Yeah. And, I have to take the opportunity to say, I love your wife, Emma, as well, because she has been amazing in helping me with my business related stuff as well. Eternally grateful for all of her help. So everyone should really check out what she can do because she's awesome. Yeah, very grateful for her. But the positive change stuff, I think that I find when I'm working with my clients and even for myself personally, that it's a hard one to talk about with friends and family because there's this idea of like I remember, for example, buying my house, the house that I live in now. I've loved this house for a long time. My ex-husband and I looked at buying it once upon a time, but he didn't like it. And then when it came on the market after separation and I bought it, it was just like a dream come true. But then I had to move into it. And, like it was this most amazing moment in my life. So I found it really hard talking to people about how stressed I was and uncomfortable I was. And, I had been living in this very, very teeny tiny townhouse with my 3 children. So there was all these positives, but I was freaking out and in, like, early stages, like meltdown type feelings because I was moving into the house I'd loved for so long. It's people, when you try and say to people, I'm really struggling because I have to move house and especially in the context of exciting, you've bought a house, it's the house you've loved forever. People are like, what's wrong with you? You are focusing on the negatives, you're ungrateful, or all of those things. And it was none of that at all. It was about the change, and positive change can be really hard. And when you don't have anywhere to express that, you keep it all in, and it can absolutely contribute to burnout.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, I guess the other thing to consider as well is that, like, it's not just up to the individual as well. Like, I think, we've talked about it in the workplace, but, in schools, workplace, loved ones, like, people need to be more understanding that, like, when it comes to autistic and ADHD burnout, it's not like, oh, take a long weekend and you'll be right, like, on Tuesday. It requires deep rest. It requires, like, particularly as an autistic person, like when you're really burnt out, any kind of sensory input is really overwhelming. And that's why a lot of people, when they're in burnout, they're like, make a cave, or like they're like a couch, like a burrito or whatever. Cause it's just like, I just need to be in my own space with no demands, with, as little sensory input as possible, so that my body and brain and nervous system can relax and recuperate.
Yeah.
And 3 days isn't going to cut it, and it does take deep rest. And I think a lot of people, particularly when they have those kind of like that guilt and that shame and that kind of perfectionism, they're like, oh, I can't do that, I have to be helping others, or I have to be doing this, like I can't just rest. And I'm always like, look, like, you need to rest, because if you don't, like, it's going to get worse, and it's going to get to the point where your body shuts down. Because when our bodies are giving us these signals that we're having a low mood, we're feeling fatigue, often people start to get headaches, their brain gets really foggy, like our body is giving us these cues, hey, you need to slow down. And if you don't, then those cues are going to continue to get louder and louder until, for some people, they're very incapacitated.
And I think that if not listening to those cues, it is going to lead to health related stuff, but also like relationship. Hello, cat.
My cat Kai Kai, he's our special guest.
Well, yeah, we should talk later about whether or not you're willing to rent out your cats to help with my mice issue.
I don't know. He's a bit of a scaredy cat. He'd probably run away. He had an insect in here once and he ran away because he was a bit scared of it. But anyway.
Yeah, I think it leads to health related consequences, but also relationship breakdowns, and it can really impact our relationships if we're not listening to those cues around burnout, because something that neurodivergent people experience is that social withdrawal. But that means from your immediate family as well. It means from your intimate partner relationships, your children, the people you live with. That foggy brain and that executive function sort of increased challenges there means that it's really hard to string a sentence together. It means that there's less thought content, so you literally have nothing to say. Someone might ask you a question and you don't have anything there to respond with, because it's just all that pressure. And if that goes on, hopefully we're all in really loving, healthy, supportive relationships where our partners fully understand this stuff, but often that's not the case, and everyone has their limits. How long do you live with a person who is completely shut down and withdrawn from you? So especially if both of you don't really understand fully what is going on, it can look like relationship disengagement.
Yeah. And I think it's important to highlight as well is that, if people are, I'm happy to just kind of read out some of the, the signs that you may be experiencing burnout. And, if you do have a loved one who's experiencing these, be really curious about what's going on. Because I can tell you, all of my clients feel such shame and guilt. And if they could choose to do all the things that you're asking of them, 110% they would be doing them, but they literally can't. So there's physical, we've got like chronic fatigue, headaches, and sleep challenges. We've got emotional, so there can be mood swings, anxiety, feelings of overwhelm, and also cognitive, so difficulty concentrating, decision making challenges, and memory issues. I'd also add to that like increased challenges with I guess like coping with sensory overwhelm. Like my tolerance for sensory overwhelm is quite low. So as you can imagine, when someone's experiencing all of those, it's incredibly difficult to do like anything. You can't even sit there and think. And like some of my clients, they're like, oh, I'm just sitting here doom scrolling on social media. And I just go, well, maybe that's just what you need to do. Like even just the thought of thinking is too much. Like that's what I'm really trying to like cement in here. That's how much it impacts you.
I actually find it really helpful to go talking with my clients and helping them understand all of the things that they do, that they themselves, maybe the people around them, loved ones, whatever it might be, have labeled their behaviors, coping strategies, again, whatever it might be, as lazy, unhelpful, unproductive, all those negative things. So using doom scrolling as the example, people get really down on themselves. I hear it so often, like, oh yeah, I've just been doom scrolling for days. I just lay in bed or whatever, sitting on the couch. My partner's getting really annoyed at me because I'm just on Instagram, whatever, Facebook scrolling. When I find it really helpful to talk about what does a person get from doom scrolling. There's, what is the function there? So it might. I know myself, I'm not a huge consumer of social media, but sometimes I find myself stuck in a doom scroll. And, I've examined myself and what I'm doing there, because quite often I'm not even paying attention to the videos. Like I don't even have the sound on because it annoys me. So why am I doing that when I'm not paying attention to the content and what is happening? And what we get from sitting there doom scrolling is mental rest, because, let's face it, the vast majority of social media content isn't super complex in its ideas and the way it's presented. It's these short little reels that dump an idea or, something funny, whatever it might be, and you move on. So there's mental rest there, when you are just doing that, but there's also a little bit of that stimulation because of, maybe the movement, the colors, if you are listening to it, the sounds. So you're doing something that you need, but you don't realize what you're doing, how you're doing it, or why you're doing it. You've just kind of gravitated towards that doom scrolling. And if you want to change what you're doing when you're getting that mental rest, because you don't want to be on social media, once you know why you're stuck doing this thing, then you can decide to, right, I need mental rest. How else can I get that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm similar. I don't I try not to spend too much time on social media, because I just find sometimes it can be a bit negative, and yeah, sometimes unhelpful. And yeah, like I guess, if people feel that that's what they need to do, and doom scroll, like, I love a good meme. Like sometimes I'll just go scouting for like funny memes to kind of save, to send to my friends, or there might be like particular like groups. So like I have, apparently Facebook is for old people, so young people don't have Facebook anymore. But anyway, so that's anyway, but like, I have a few particular groups, so I won't just scroll on my feed. Like I'll go to these particular groups and I might kind of talk to people, or whatever. Or I'm on, like, on Substack, I might kind of read a particular blog. So like I might be like a little bit more conscious of the content that I am, like, I guess, consuming. But like that, there's no harm in that. And if that's what you need, and it's like, you're allowed to do whatever, well, I guess within the confines of the law, you're allowed to do what, if it's your like downtime, you're allowed to do whatever the heck you want. Like literally, like you don't have to get permission from anyone or society to like put a stamp of approval on what you're doing. You can literally do whatever you want. If you just want to sit there and stare at a wall for 2 hours, if that's what you want to do, then by all means do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't have to worry about other people when you're choosing what you want to do.
I often find this time of year, I do start heading towards burnout, for some of those reasons that we spoke about before. The moving towards Christmas, the increased social demands, the change in routines and stuff. No one's like, the closer you get to Christmas, people aren't working the way they're meant to. It just drives my brain crazy. And I think it was about this time last year, I found myself sitting at my partner's place, just staring at the retaining wall around his veggie garden, because there was these ants, and it just absolutely captivated me, watching the behavior of these ants trying to get food back to their nest. And yeah, so much time spent staring at these ants. But yeah, many people would have seen that as quite odd, but it was so relaxing and interesting and stimulating all at the same time. And yeah, just, you don't need permission to watch ants work.
I look out the window and I watch clouds. I watch clouds, or I watch the birds. I mean, it's not great, but we have like power lines, and the birds like hang out on the power lines, and I watch them, because it's like, I don't know, I find nature to be quite relaxing, and yeah, so I think that's totally fine. And I think yeah, I just remember, like, as a kid, like I'd lie on the trampoline. I just look at the clouds and like kind of watch them change. So
Oh yeah, same.
yeah, so
Yeah.
you get the I didn't like jumping on the trampoline, but I just liked lying on it. So you get that kind of input, like that yeah. It's almost like floating in water, but you don't get wet. So I preferred that.
My absolute ultimate when I was a kid was to lay on the trampoline and watch the clouds. But again, I didn't want to jump on the trampoline, but I would love it if I could convince one of my siblings to not jump, but just lightly bounce near me. So I had this bit of gentle movement, and it was just, oh, it was like the perfect combination. But yeah, it was rare because it really hinged on my ability to convince one of my siblings to bounce me.
But also like the exact right bounce, like
Yes.
not too much, not like a Goldilocks bounce. Yeah, that's
Yeah. If they wanted to be an asshole, all they had to do was jump, and it's just like, no,
and
you've
like
pushed me too far.
when you live in a household of ADHDers, we like to stir. So even if
Yes.
it's not in malice, we
Mm.
might do a bit of it. I mean, I speak for myself there, but I probably would have, if I was your sister, I probably would have stirred a little. Um, yeah. So yeah, I guess what I'm trying to say is that like as autistic ADHDers, sometimes our preferences for what we do in our downtime might be seen by others as a bit unusual, but I'm giving you full permission, not that you need my permission, but I'm giving you full permission to do whatever the heck you want within
Mm.
the confines of the law, what you want to do in your downtime. Like no judgment for that whatsoever. I think to wrap up, something that I wanted to talk about a little bit was around masking,
Mm-hmm.
is that can be like a massive um, something that yeah really contributes to burnout, and I guess that really encapsulates a lot of the other challenges as well, because when you're masking, you're masking your executive functioning differences, you're masking your sensory sensitivities, you're trying to conform to those societal expectations, and yeah, I guess something that I guess I really want to convey when it comes to masking is just the cognitive load that it takes in order to mask. Um,
Mm.
and over time, that does accumulate in burnout. So often when clients kind of engage with me in therapy, they are going through a massive burnout. So it's usually like they're like maybe 25 to 35, and it's got to the point where they're having this massive burnout, and either because of that they've realized that maybe they're an autistic ADHDer, or they come to me and they're like, I'm anxious and depressed, what's going on? And I'm like, oh, I think you might be autistic and or ADHDer.
Yeah.
So like when I do have clients that come to me when maybe they're a little bit younger, or like they haven't got to that point, I kind of like give this warning of, hey, like you're in this unique position now where you can put all these things in place so you don't get to this massive burnout where people, it changes people's lives, like they have to leave their job or they have to like change all these things, and it's not necessarily by choice. Like sometimes those changes are for the better, but obviously if you can, it's, I guess when it comes to burnout, prevention is better.
Yeah.
That's ideal, because when we're trying to prevent it, we have some input. Once it gets to the point when we're burnt out, it gets a lot harder.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think it's actually a beautiful segue to, say we will talk more about prevention in our next episode.
We will talk more about prevention in our next episode. So yeah, in the next episode, yeah, so we'll talk about early signs and yeah, different strategies for I guess managing burnout.
Mm-hmm.
Was there anything else that you felt was important to add at all, Teena, at this?
Um, no, I guess just again talking about this time of year and like we were saying before around like the positive change and things like that. It can be really hard to voice our distress, our struggles, our challenges as we move towards like the Christmas period, because again, well, it's fun, just loosen up, relax, go with the flow. And yes, I am looking forward to Christmas time, and I do enjoy the more relaxed parts, and I like being able to catch up with people, but it does still cause me distress, and it is still really difficult, and there is a lot of pressure on my capacity to function. And for that I need to, talk about what I'm having trouble with. It doesn't mean I'm a Christmas Grinch. And I think I think, just knowing that you can have both. You can be struggling with it as well as enjoy the time of year. It doesn't have to be one or the other.
Yeah. I mean, I will say I personally I don't like Christmas or the Christmas season. And just as much as people may judge me for my unusual pastimes, I find it incredibly difficult to understand why people would willingly want to endure all the traditions of Christmas. I find that challenging to wrap my head around. But again, like people who aren't autistic or ADHD, perhaps like it doesn't wear and tear on them as much. But for me, the cost feels much bigger than the reward, I guess
Yeah.
is what I'm trying to say. Because it's not just Christmas Day, it's like the lead up, the shops,
Mm.
everyone's talking to you. What do you want? What's the plans? Everyone's stressed. Even like I just noticed like in like November and December when you're driving on the road, people are just a bit more frenzied. Like I just feel like collectively everyone is just a little bit more stressed. And I'm just like, wouldn't it be nice if we could just not do that? Like
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
relax and but again I feel like like traditionally back in the day I would say that Christmas was probably a lot more low key, but now it's like who's got the biggest tree, who's got the most presents, and who has the
But
best
then,
Christmas card or whatever.
yeah, and then on top of all of that, it's about like the meaningful Christmas gifts, and which is important to. But yeah, there's more pressure there as well. It's like, oh, I'm doing a handmade Christmas this year because of consumerism, and it's just like, oh my goodness, and now I have to make all the gifts. Oh, a lot of pressure.
Yeah, it's a lot of pressure.
Mm,
Anyway, yes, Christmas. I'm already I feel that foreboding Christmas feeling. That's all good.
mm.
Anyway, so yeah, so thank you to everyone for joining us for this episode. If you're keen to learn a little bit more about how to like prevent and support burnout, please listen to our next episode.